Welcome all to 309. Here are the books we're going to be reading this semester. Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, Anne Radcliffe's The Italian, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, George Eliot's The Lifted Veil, Charles Dickens' The Mystery of Edwin Drood, Robert Louis Stevenson' The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Bram Stoker's Dracula, and H.G. Wells's The Invisible Man. In the middle, somewhere, we're going to be reading some stories by Edgar Allan Poe. It might include a few Victorian poems in this Victorian literature course. You will see that I've specified editions. Try to stick to those editions, the ones specified. But if you already have a copy of Dracula, for example, and it's not one of the Penguin classics, well, on the one hand, I would never know. On the other hand, maybe you can save yourself a little bit of money. I did include a Dover thrift edition amongst these different choices, and that's not the highest quality edition. Sometimes we're just stuck, aren't we? I've got a Signet edition of the Frankenstein. I've already heard from one of you that, in fact, what was ordered by the bookstore is not a Signet. So when you encounter a situation of that kind, just go with what's in the bookstore. We'll make do one way or the other. It should be clear at this point that you're going to be asked to read a number of books, which I'm sure you expected, and also take some quizzes and do discussion boards and a couple of exams and maybe a course project. So the way that this will probably break down is 25% for quizzes, 25% for the discussion over the course of the semester. Quizzes over the course of the semester will take maybe as many as 15. I'll drop 2. Your 2 lowest I will drop. I hope that's welcome news. We'll take a midterm. We'll take a final. The midterm and the final will be challenging. They'll be tough tests, right? What about the papers? Well, that's the course project for maybe another 15%, and you'll see I say maybe. And that is in part a response to this reality of artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and all the rest. And you know all about that. I don't need to tell you anything about it, except that a lot of classes, a lot of courses have adapted in various ways to this new reality. And one of the ways that I have adapted is by de-emphasizing formal writing projects, emphasizing discussion boards. I'll have something to say on this question down below, right? Exactly what I will require for you on the discussion boards and how it is that those discussion boards will be most profitable if one avoids this opportunity that is provided by our new technology. So we'll have something to say about that down below. But you will see that unfortunately, as of now, the writing, the typical formal English department writing assignments are at a minimum, and we're back to testing. Okay, just to highlight a few aspects of the course that I think are important. We're going to do a lot of reading. That's pretty clear, isn't it? You do a lot of reading. You're going to be quizzed a lot, right? And in fact, the term that could be applied to the number of picky quizzes that I'll be offering, picky but necessarily so, is damnable. There's a large number of them, about 15. As I said in the last plate, I'll be dropping 2 of them. So I hope that's some comfort. But you are going to have to get into the routine of reading books and then being quizzed closely on the content of the books, because that's going to be our chief business. That and, what will turn out to be at least a fair, if not a good deal of writing, of the slightly less formal variety, mostly on the discussion boards. I have talked about this course project already. The course project, which I will be talking about when the time comes. Now, to be successful in the course, you're going to have to be able to work independently. That is, I think, the most important single aspect of the course that needs to be brought forward at this point is that it's, you're kind of on your own. You know the way this works. Now, I'm always available. I am available for consultation weekly at a number of preset hours and then also by appointment. But most of the business of the course, we don't go to class, right? We're at home. We don't even meet at home synchronously. It's asynchronous. And that can be a very tough tough sort of requirement for some folks. So you have to not fall behind. You have to stick with it, and you have to, without a lot of prompting from me, although I will be sending you reminders on a weekly basis, you're going to have to get used to anticipating work that you know is going to be due and going out of your way to make sure that you, connect with the course, check in, find out what you need to do for that week. Now we're going to have a regular, as I'll be explaining in a panel or two, we're going to have a regular sequence, a regular kind of routine that's going to make this pretty easy to do. It's going to be pretty easy to get into the swing of it. But I can't stress enough the necessity that you not make the mistake of imagining, for example, that this is going to be some easy course moving on to the next bullet point. I conceive of it as a junior, senior level humanities course, roughly equivalent to an intermediate level pre-calculus course, if we want to go over to the math department for the moment. So it's not an easy course. It's a hard course, right? It's not a ridiculously hard course, but it's not a gut course. So bear that in mind. It's a serious course. We're going to be, I hope, having a lot of fun this semester. But it's serious fun, and it's the kind of fun that requires a lot of hard work in order to have. To the end of encouraging folks to stick with the course, and also just out of necessity, bitter experience has taught me that it's a big mistake for anyone missing more than 3 quizzes or discussion boards in a row. In other words, taking a break from the course, an entire week-long break. Do that 3 times in a row, you'll be disenrolled from the course. Or should it be too late in the semester for that, you'll fail the course. There are no exceptions. I have to be draconian about this. Trust me, I have your interest in mind when I set up this rule. So be afraid if you start missing, because if you keep it up and you keep missing, it's just going to be very difficult to recover from that. Okay? So stick with it, and stick with it regularly, and things will go very well for you. Well, I mentioned that routine in the last plate. Just to be absolutely clear, the schedule in general, almost every week. What is the routine? Well, by Wednesday of the week, end of day, submit an answer response. And you'll see the instructions for such on the discussion board. Our first discussion board will begin. It really begins the weekend before it is due. That's when I begin to post items for the discussion board, which I will do this weekend, Friday and Saturday. And the first one that will be due will be next Wednesday. Okay, not this coming Wednesday, but the one after. And after that, we can consider the routine established. Actually, before you have a routine, you'd have to do it twice, wouldn't you? By the Wednesday following that. So by Wednesday of every week, virtually every week, there will be some departures from a routine when we have, for example, an exam to take. But by Wednesday of most weeks, you will submit by the end of the day an answer response based upon the discussion board items that have been posted usually the weekend before. Then by Saturday of the same week, subsequent to the answer response that you've posted, you'll take a quiz to be found under assessments, and you'll be quizzed on the material for that week. Also by Saturday, although this could spill into Sunday and often will, you should be able to watch, and I would like you to watch, a micro lecture, a video micro lecture that I will have posted under content. So that's going to be our routine. Right? A quiz and a movie to watch and take notes on during the weekend. And then earlier in the week, on the Wednesday, after you've done all your reading, yet earlier in the week, you will submit your answer response. Okay, our discussion boards, which are due weekly, your contribution will usually, almost always be due on the Wednesday. Not this week, I wanted to give you an extra day. Okay, so it's Thursday of this week, but usually on a Wednesday. End of day. Midnight is what that means. Well, contribution, I said. Your contribution will usually be due on the Wednesday. Contribution, singular. Yes, unless I say different, use just one item and write an answer response to it. Now, I may have you begin to give some comments on each other's answers, slashes, responses, with contributions. Okay, I may institute that as a practice here. Before too long, we're going to see how it goes. And if you had to write a comment on each other's answer responses, okay, an answer response of a fellow student, it would probably be due the next day, like
like at 5 o'clock or maybe even midnight. So that would be something that would be due on a Thursday. Don't worry about that right now. We're going to see how this goes, just doing it, keeping it really simple, and just doing this answer/response on Wednesday night. Should I just blurt out the first thing that comes to mind in answering these discussion boards? No, you know that, right? Carefully consider your response. It's going to be graded. And I invite you to have a look at the criteria for grading discussion board contributions, which is, of course, in the information drawer. Write and complete sentences. Be argumentative. You'll hear me use this phrase. Those of you I had in 200 have heard it before. Be substantive. Be substantial, right? Be substantive. Offer evidence. Quote the text briefly and precisely in support of your claims. Put substance, intellectual substance, evidentiary substance into your response, right? Explain what you quote. Don't just quote it. Make your contribution also substantial. And what that means is at least 4 or 5 sentences. It should have that kind of substance and heft. It should be a paragraph, a good solid paragraph, okay? So not 2 sentences, not even maybe 3 sentences. Now, should I engage in overkill? Because it looks like Professor May really wants us to be substantial. Well, I'll be substantial. I'll contribute a 3-page, 36-sentence answer response. Now, remember, this is a discussion board. It's like a bulletin board. You want your fellow students will be reading it, especially if we start doing comments. They'll be commenting on what you've contributed. Be deft, okay? Be as complete as possible, but also be pithy and be succinct. And try to keep it shapely in the shape of a good, strong, powerful paragraph, which can go on. It can be 7 or 8 sentences, 10 sentences. But you should not give me like a mini essay of 3 or 4 paragraphs, okay? Well, here's a question of great, shall we say, urgency these days. Should I use ChatGPT or some other AI program as a source of answers to the questions on the board? You know the answer to that question. No, by no means, obviously. Students who do so quickly betray themselves and often end up failing the course. If nothing else, they destroy trust. Enough said on that one. Should I consult ChatGPT when I'm done writing up my answer response? No, stay away from it. Well, what about ChatGPT? Stay away from it. Avoid it as if it were the plague. It's revolutionizing, okay, the study of English literature in universities, and not in a good way. So just stay away from it, and I think everybody's going to be a lot happier.
Okay, the quizzes, not to be outdone by the discussion boards, due typically Saturday by end of day, as you know. We'll have quite a few of them, as you also know. This you may not know, they cannot be made up. It's extremely difficult to make up these quizzes and very time consuming. And I can't give you a quiz, a make-up quiz, without making up a new one. So that's one of the reasons why, in fact, I'm dropping your 2 lowest quiz scores. This practice provides a cushion for you, and I think will substitute for the complicated rigmarole of makeups. So use your misses wisely. You do have 2 of them. They will not count against you, those 2 lowest quizzes. And of course, one of your lowest quizzes could be simply a quiz you miss. Now, the quizzes will be concentrated on the readings for the week in question. And typically just that week, or just since the last quiz. You will not be quizzed on past weeks, not usually, unless I say. You won't be, that's the rule. The midterm will quiz you on past weeks, but the individual quizzes will be devoted to individual works for the week. I'll usually give you 30 to 40 minutes to do a quiz. They'll be due at the end of the day, so what I will be inviting you to do is to start by 11:20 p.m. at the very latest, in order to make full use of your time. They're mostly objective, though they're trending these days towards more subjective, and what I mean by that is they ask you to do a little writing and interpreting as well as just the recollection of brute details from the various narratives. This is an example of the more subjective. Subsequent to the incident at the window, we find out exactly why Jekyll suddenly thrusts the window sash down and retreats. What is that explanation? Okay, that's actually an example of something relatively objective. And then if you drop down to the very bottom, an example of the subjective is what is Henry Jekyll's chief moral failing, would you say? You can tell that would require that you think and not just recollect. And also argue. And also, as I say here, quote and